always felt that Photoshop's native sharpening methods are good, but that I could never really achieve the sharpening in the places I wanted the way I intended to. And I understand that Photoshop can only have so many standard sets as sharpening and the Nik sharpener as well. So why not use Photoshop's capability of recording my own action and customizing my sharpening? My own method is basically a combination of a few different filters in Photoshop, and all of those can be adjusted at all times, even after the sharpening has been applied. As I mentioned in the very beginning, all that really needs sharpening in an image are the edges and not much else. So we have to find a way to make this happen. We start by duplicating the layer and again converting this layer here into a smart object. So zoom back out to make the image fit the screen. And now we're creating a mask. More specifically, we're creating a luminosity mask and we're creating a darks mask. And we do this by command and click on the RGB channel, which gives us our first lights, which is the 50% lights mask, selecting 50% of the brightest tones in the image. I could have also done that by clicking the lights one here in the TK Actions panel. But we could also do this without the panel by just using command and click on the RGB channel. We will now go ahead and invert the selection, clicking on select and then inverse. So now we have 50% of the darkest images being selected. We save this as a new layer and rename this layer into AD General Sharpen and hit enter. Now we deselect the selection and go to filter, go to stylize and then find edges. Now Photoshop tries to find the edges in the image, which does it pretty well here in this case. And then now we're trying to adjust those edges a little bit more. And we do so by clicking on Image, Adjustments, and creating a Levels adjustment. And what has worked well for me is to increase this to the following settings here, which is also the standard of my actions, to 75, meaning we're increasing the black areas here and have Photoshop to find more edges for us, meaning more sharpening will be applied in the end. We'll leave the rest at 1 and 255, but all this will be as well adjustable later on when we have the actions run in Photoshop. Confirm by clicking OK. And now we load the mask again and create this new mask behind the layer here. And can now see the mask again by Alt-click on the mask. So we're going back and select the layer by clicking Command click. And now we intersect the layer with itself by clicking Shift Alt and Command or Shift Alt and Control. And now we go ahead and click on Edit, Fill, and fill this layer, the selection, with 100% black. So what this will do is it blackens out all those areas that we don't want to be sharpened in the image in the end. Now we deselect our selection and we see those white areas, or those lighter areas are those areas that actually will be sharpened, and those are basically the edges in the image. So we go back on the layer, and this would be the mask that is being filtered through. And we go to Filter, Sharpen, and create an Unsharp mask first. Now this is strongly filtered through the mask, so we can have a ridiculous amount here and set this to 500% and a 1 radius pixel. So this preview image actually shows the sharpening applied without being the mask in place, so this looks pretty radical. But if I click on OK here, it does look actually much better in the end. So we can zoom in and see what it looks right now. It's just this one filter in place. If I turn this on and off here, this is the sharpening being applied to the edges. Let's go back and make this fit to screen. And now we leave this here and again go to Filter, go to Other, and then apply a high pass filter to the image. A high pass filter is also used by some as a conventional sharpening method by itself to increase the tonal contrast. In this case, it will help us to do the same for the edges in the image. So we set the radius a little bit lower than 10. We set it to 3. And you will see here what it does. It looks pretty radical in the preview, but it does not look that bad in the end in the image. The last thing we will do now is actually to change the blending mode. You will see we've lost a lot of color here. We will send it from normal to overlay. And we get back our color. And now we zoom in the image again to see how our sharpening looks in compared to the other sharpening methods. And let's turn this on and off here to see what we've done. And we've nicely introduced some contrast and sharpening in just the areas of the edges here. The blue sky is not being sharpened at all because it's already being masked out. We can also compare this to the Nik sharpening. And what we see is our sharpening is a lot less radical. It applies to the edges, but it's also very subtle. It's not that strong, but it's a decent sharpening, and for pre-sharpening, it's definitely good enough because we will apply another sharpening in the end as output sharpening. In almost all cases, I found that I could achieve a better sharpening with my own sharpening method than with the standard filters within Photoshop. In fact, all filters that have been created as smart filters also helps to adjust the sharpening and its strength afterwards. To achieve an even more restrictive sharpening, one could also use a Darks 2 or Dark 3 mask instead of just a Darks 1 that we've used initially to create this mask as a layer mask later, and so we reduce this and get a better sharpening. You could also reduce the sharpening simply by using the opacity slider here and move this from 100%, let's say, to 65%, and reduce the sharpening in a very simple and effective way. This method is a rather complex sharpening method, which is why I've created a set of actions that comes with this tutorial. And as of late, I've even created my own custom panel. Tony Kuiper was a big help in achieving all this and helping me creating this action here. I hope you will find it useful. I'm using it basically for all my prints and all the images that I publish as a general sharpening method. It's quick and easy to use with the panel. So we could also go ahead and delete this layer now here and create the same action with my little sharpening panel here. But just under sharpening actions, just click on general sharpening and the action will run and stop at several points so we can make the adjustments as we see fit. Again, we can set here the amounts of sharpening will be applied. The higher I drag this on this side, the more sharpening I will apply to the image. But we leave this here for demonstration purposes at 75. Click OK. Next up is the Unsharp mask. Again, I confirm usually with OK. Leave it at 500%. And then the high pass filter again, set at 3. Click OK. And the sharpening action is done. So that works pretty easy. Let's have a look at how this looks like on some of the other images of mine. Here we have a scene which has several layers already, with which I've adjusted the image to the way I found it to look really nice. What I'm going to do here, we have two options now. We can actually use the sharpening based on the original image, or what I would actually recommend is create a new merge visible layer on top of the already existing layers. And based on that new merge layer, I would then apply my sharpening to the image. And let's zoom in a little bit to have a closer look at what the sharpening does. Okay, let's go in at 66.7%. And that's it, general sharpening. The first step is here as well, the Etch Mask that Photoshop has just created for us. And we can again control here those points by moving this left or right. Let's do a little bit more sharpening here. Let's move this to 100 and let's play with this one here. This will reduce some of the areas in between. Let's reduce this to, let's say 121, and confirm with OK. The sharpening here will be set at 500, and again we can see here how drastic this would have looked like without the mask in place. Confirm with OK. And do the same thing here with the high pass filter. Again, confirm with OK. And we can see the sharpening being applied. If I now turn visibility of that mask on and off, we can see how nicely Photoshop has sharpened our image, especially here in the rock area and along those houses here in the mountain, without really losing contrast, without changing colors, and really just the edges and all those areas that we don't want to be sharpened, like the sky area up here, hasn't been sharpened at all. I hope you find these actions useful and they will help you in achieving a better or more satisfactory sharpening in your images in the end. And you will see more of these actions being applied in the tutorials that are to follow.